No, I would speak. Let us take a look. I always promise this, that I do my due diligence on these things to look. I do believe this issue, and again, I hear this. When the Supreme Court ruled on Citizens United, they ruled, there's frustration on this, but here was the narrow, they ruled on it, and it did basically have the effect of saying corporations can function as individual people. But the broader, maybe not the broader, the more narrow argument they made, where I think there's validity in this, is how you spend your money is a freedom of speech issue. That was where it was. We as a nation have to have this discussion, because I'm telling you, you tell me, someone said, oh, that's a beautiful pin right there. And I said, it should be, it costs $2 million every 2 years. So that is something wrong. There is something wrong. Whether you're a high school teacher, a farmer, an attorney, a doctor, or whatever, this is what gets people so frustrated. There are 750,000 people in this district, and no one runs, mainly because of money in politics. And what I would say is, can't we do a better job of that? And again, we get asked all the time, can you do that and do it legally? I think you can. I think Senator McCain figured out how to do that. And I think the American people would respond to that and say that being able to give $5 million without tracking where it comes from to go into an electoral race is undermining the will of the people. So if you don't have $5 million, is your voice being heard? And let's all be honest about this. If someone gives someone $5 million and you give nothing and you're both constituents, whose phone call gets picked up?
Your fellow colleague, Keith Ellison, is running to be the DNC chair.
Yes.
And the election is in just a day or two.
I think he.
And I'm wondering if you are going to support him or who you are planning to support for Democratic.
Yeah, I do not have a vote in that. That is Democratic insider politics. The one thing I am is I am incredibly loyal to friends, and Keith and I are friends, so I support what Keith is trying. I will answer the question on that, and I will answer candidly on this. Because there have been cases, certainly in protective gear, that I have voted while I was on the Armed Services Committee to allow them to have protective vests and some of those things, because this is dangerous work. These are our neighbors. They get out there to try and serve us in ways that are unimaginable. Many of them are in my family, are police officers. This is a noble profession, and it's challenging and it's difficult. But I also agree with this, and I think our communities around here do a very good job of this. The accessibility of seeing police officers amongst us in a manner where we are neighbors, not seeing them in an armored personnel carrier per se, or something like that, that gets to be where that connection is severed with the community. And I think what we're seeing, and I don't believe in the first district we do, and we have folks really leaning into this, you see these very tense severings of the police community with the folks that they serve and vice versa, that causes all kinds of angst. And then once again, because it's in America, politicians have to pick it up, and you have to be on one side, and then if you pick up a color of one side versus the other, you start to see it happen. I think most of us recognize, and I say this about any profession, if you've got a bad teacher, get rid of the bad teacher. If you've got a bad doctor, get rid of the bad doctor. If you've got a bad police officer, get rid of the bad police officer. It doesn't mean the person working next to them isn't a fabulous police officer doing fabulous work. And so the militarization, I don't think there's anything out there at this point in time that would warrant doing that, and you can't call for it just as it is. But I would ask everyone to please, please, please don't be disingenuous, because as someone mentioned, I worked next to people who for 8 years would not acknowledge President Obama in any way. Since marriage equality was established, there was a significant, statistically significant drop in suicide attempts amongst our high school kids. That's a good thing. This issue, again, is one of those that gets politically charged, and I would ask all of us, and I try and do this for my own sanity, and I try and do it because I think it's the right thing to do, putting ourselves literally in the other people's shoes and wondering why they're doing what they're going to do. And when I think through this, when I say this as a teacher, there's about 150,000 of our children identified in our schools, in our public schools, trans students. And as a teacher, my number one responsibility in the classroom was the safety, security, and belongingness of every single child in that classroom. And if this child, for those who have concern, and I will not minimize people's concerns who are concerned that this is going to make an unsafe situation, whatever, I ask you that in many cases, these are children my son's age, a 4th grader, a 10-year-old, who just wants to go to the bathroom, and their identity is they are male or female, and they just go in that bathroom and use issues. And as I said, and people brought this up, we need to understand security of the nation does matter. And we have a right, every sovereign nation has a right to control who enters its borders. The problem we've had with our immigration program, more so than the refugee program, is it's broken. And so when people say go get in line, there's no line. It takes 25 years and people try and do it the right way. That we should want, because I tell you this, America's last 7 Nobel winners were all immigrants that came here. Nobel Prize. That's a good thing. But I don't think we should kid ourselves that not everybody who comes is a Nobel Prize winner. Right. Like me, like my family, they were not Nobel Prize winners. But I think this issue of focusing on, and that goes back to this blanket coverage of an entire religion or entire group of people, is a waste of resources to get at the very people who do want to do harm, and then we don't have the money there to do what we need to do with that. So that makes sense. This group in here, this issue of gun control, the Second Amendment and your constitutional right to bear arms is something that's very important to me and very important to many of you. Whether you have them or not, you realize that it's there. The ability, again, to do a background check to make sure you are not a criminal or should not have a weapon should not be all that difficult for all of us to agree on. I feel that. I ask all of you that these issues are not so concrete as you think, and I am taking, many of you in this room, I'm sure, were on the phone giving me a rap when the Social Security Administration had a proposal on guns that said if you were on Social Security disability for something related to a mental illness, you were going to be forbidden from buying a gun. My opinion on that was the same as the American Civil Liberties Union and the Disabled American Veterans, that demonizing an entire group of people and stigmatizing them that they are violent and dangerous to themselves and others, those are people that have fiduciary issues where they didn't pay their bills sometime, or they have a eating disorder. And many of them have spent their lives hunting in therapeutic ways or owning those weapons legally that they would have been without any other authority. Just because they were receiving Social Security disability, they wouldn't have been able to go and own that gun to go hunting or trap shooting. And I oppose that. Not because, as people say, but the gentleman's point is well taken on this, that conversation was listened to in a manner that they had the recordings on it, and under what authority to do that. Now, this issue of cybersecurity is huge, and I have been hopefully on the cutting edge of this because some of our best capabilities are in our National Guard, our citizen soldiers, our computer technicians among our young folks who are also in the National Guard. So we've stood up some of those. But I have always tried to, and it goes back to the gentleman's quote about liberty and security, of those civil liberties that you have versus their ability to blanket listen and grab everything you're doing, we have to be very careful about. I know that they need to get this information, and I know it doesn't always work like it does on 24, that if you don't get the information in 2 seconds, it's going to happen. I know it doesn't work like that, but you do have to have the ability to crack the codes on some of these to be able to get to the right people. And we have a system in our constitutional way of doing things it's called a warrant. By going to the judge, asking and laying out your case and going. I'll tell you what I hope that I think maybe will be there. I would make the case that an ACA fix of some type should come up. Now, it may be, we don't know yet, it may be a repeal and replace, it may be a repeal and nothing, it may be a repeal and wait 2 years, probably till like November 9th after, 2008, but whatever it would be. There has to be. All of us know. For the good things that happen in the ACA, there are legitimate failings that left people in this community with outrageously high costs that they could not afford. And whether the ACA caused that or not, it certainly didn't fix it. So I hope there would be an ACA bill I would like, and we have not done this yet. We have not passed a single bill that has come through the regular order. The gentleman's talking about the 99 votes. There's something called suspension votes that go through that. You remember when you were little, some of us of a certain age, I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill. I got to go to committee. There's no committee doing that. There's no one putting it on there. There's no put this bill and it would be a good thing. But they promised us And this is where I have great agreement with my Freedom Caucus friends. Those folks who caused John Boehner a lot of problem said one of the problems with Congress is we don't follow regular order. Where bills are introduced, we debate them in the subcommittee, we debate them in the committee, we come together, we pass a bill, the Senate does the same thing, we get a conference report, they go back, we put it together, and we send it to the President to be signed. None of that has been done. All of you in here who hated that you heard President Obama was doing executive orders, nothing has passed this year that wasn't an executive order. So we should come back, you should be mad at Democrats and Republicans, and we should bring that back. So those two bills could come in regular order, and you think if we got those passed, here's what I think it would do. I think it would bring better policy, it would bring health care closer to what we want to try and get it. I think we could bring a fairness to the tax bill, but you know what it would do would be its greatest thing if those two things went through regular order? It would ratchet down the angst and people would start to believe we could do things like that. And I would ask, all go Google, I don't get a pension for life after I'm done, and we buy on an exchange, you, the taxpayers, just like when I was teaching school, pay 50% of my premium. I pay $890. I have a $1,500 deductible, which all you are saying, I want that plan right now. You should have that plan. That's what we should do. So yes, I will answer yes to your question.
So my question is, are you willing to walk across the aisle and say to them, when you go back and say, we need this?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I'm going to answer it. Yes, as I've said in the beginning, healthcare reform is a journey, not a destination. The ACA did not fix everything, but don't pretend that in 2008 that everything was peachy keen with our healthcare. Don't also pretend that you've got neighbors sitting in here who are not benefiting from the ACA and are in worse shape than they were. That is truly true. And so, yeah, I will vote, and there were 63 votes in the last 7 years. It's a misnomer that all 63 were meant to repeal the ACA. 57 of them were meant to repeal the ACA. But guess what? Guess what? 6 of them actually tweaked at it to fix it, and I voted for them. 35 Democrats or so voted for them. I caught hell. They write in the blogs, oh, which 35 Democrats sold out and repealed Obamacare? I am not tied to that. I'm telling you why there is no Republican replacement, because we've had 50 years to try and do these things. There is no easy fix. When they tell you, and there's really 2 ways as insurance that you can make money on this. You can either only insure healthy young people, or when someone gets sick, you can deny paying them. If you don't have everybody in, and you aren't keeping people healthy, this becomes very difficult. So those who say we need to let the free market do this or whatever, if it's free or single payer, but your answer is yes, and it's real, and your neighbors are hurting, and there are some good things in here. But here's the irony. I find this really interesting. I saw over the last month or so, they're running ads. Tim Walz voted for the ACA, voted for Obamacare, whatever. What we really need is health care that allows you to keep your children on until they're 26, not be kicked off. It was the ACA. It was the ACA. But I'll be the first to tell you and stand up on this. Nobody has come up, and there are some solutions on this, sir. There's risk corridors like we do with Medicare. Some people have tried that and said that that's handouts to the insurance companies or whatever. We could have buy-in for people age 50 to 64 to buy in early to Medicare. We could have people, and I think this buy into the federal health plans, if they might be, as a fix. There are fixes out there if we're willing to come together on this. But I'll tell you what I'm not willing to do. I'm not willing to kick 20 million people off. I'm not willing to go back to but I am willing to go back. And Congress outpaced the general public for 25 years on their stock investments. You know this, that there's only 2 ways that could have happened. Either you had a collection of the most intelligent and savvy or they knew something you didn't know. My question was, if restoring faith in government is, I don't think you should buy them in the first place, but if you buy them, you should at least put them out there and let people see what they're doing. Now, here's how it ended, the fast forward, and I thank you for this. We could not get anybody to sign on to that. There was a Friday night we left, I had 4 signatures. Sunday, 60 Minutes did an expose story on a congressman who sold stock and got rich on it. Monday morning, I had 350. I'll go back to this issue on term limits. When you're in office, you don't support it. No, but here's what I will tell you. I have evolved on this for this reason. The surest way you could fix this with term limits is nonpartisan judicial redistricting and campaign finance repeal. And then, say you hit the jackpot and you actually get a good one who you want to keep in, you could. But in places in state government where they have those two things in place, the re-election rate for incumbents is about 55%, where they don't have them in Congress. Now, when I was first running for Congress, I told my staff, don't ever tell me what the re-election rate is for an incumbent. It's 98%. Now when I'm in, I'm like, tell me every day what that is. That's wrong. So if we can't do, and again, the Supreme Court ruled last summer that we can do that, and they started redistricting in Arizona and Virginia and Florida, fixing that problem. But if we don't get there, I think as citizens, you're probably right. If you can't move them out by a fairness to the districts and the money, you should probably move them out on time. So yeah, let's go here. Yes, ma'am.
Would you consider running for governor? I
can't keep secrets on this. Yes, I would consider that. So thank you for that. Yes.